with the Sixers' recent exit in the Eastern Conference semifinals, the question's starting to be asked if Ben Simmons is going to be traded this offseason, and that's because of how poorly he's been in the playoffs and recently for the Sixers. The Timberwolves have always been one of the top rumored teams in wanting Ben Simmons, if it was last year when they were awarded the number 1 draft pick in the lottery, or if it's now this year after the playoffs are starting to come to an end with the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals starting. So in this video, I'm going to break down if the Timberwolves should go for Ben Simmons and who I would not trade for him. I want to start off by saying that Ben Simmons is still an all-NBA level defensive talent and can be an all-NBA level player. He's a elite passer, elite player in transition, fantastic at driving to the basket and dunking, but he really lacks at shot creating and shooting the ball, which are two of the biggest, if not the biggest things in today's game, and it's just something you need. And just if you don't have those things in the NBA today, you're almost unplayable late game, and he was proved to be unplayable against the Hawks in this series, but for some reason Doc Rivers continued to play him, so he has massive questions at those ends. For the Timberwolves' sake, obviously we need defense, so adding an all-NBA defender makes a lot of sense, and you also have to point out the fact that we do have a lot of shooters on this team, so you would assume maybe we don't need the shooting as much, but you have to know that Ben Simmons' value, despite his play recently, is still pretty high, so you're going to have to evidently give up a lot of value to get Ben Simmons. And one of those high-value pieces has been D'Angelo Russell, mentioned in a bunch of trade packages involving the Wolves and Ben Simmons recently in the last 24 hours. And personally, I am really against that trade. If we really need defense that bad, we could just easily go up in free agency and try to get a guy for $5 million a year. We don't need to go through a whole effort to trade away maybe our most playable guy in crunch time behind Karl-Anthony Towns, evidently our most clutch player from deep, especially in D'Angelo Russell, for a guy that's just unplayable late currently, unless he can make significant improvements. At the end of the day, I really hope the Timberwolves do not involve D'Angelo Russell in a potential deal for Ben Simmons, but there is other packages that I would consider and that I would be fine doing. I think it makes sense to unload these bad contracts that Ricky Rubio has and then try to get rid of Jarrett Culver. You're going to have to include some more pieces like a Malik Beasley and maybe a pick. At the end of the day, that deal makes a lot more sense to me, but I'm still a little lenient because, the fit with Ben Simmons on the team does make sense. The power forward spot next to Cat, he does make a lot of sense there, but I still question his shooting, especially in the Timberwolves system, where we are a very pro shooting system and he can't shoot the ball at all. The only problem is I don't think Malik Beasley, a first-round pick, Ricky Rubio, and Jarrett Culver is going to be enough to land Ben Simmons based off the potential market and what other teams will be most likely offering. So at the end of the day, I do not feel like Ben Simmons is going to become a Minnesota Timberwolf, but it is one of the more realistic and more possible destinations than most. I would say the Timberwolves have a top 5 chance to get Ben Simmons this offseason. There's still a lot of optimism around Ben Simmons that he can become a better shooter from the field, and we're not talking like a Seth Curry or Steph Curry type shooter, but more playable, maybe 75% from the free throw line, and somebody who can occasionally hit open threes. That is something I see as a very realistic possibility in the upcoming years. It's just a matter of where his mental state's at, in my opinion. I think it's a big mental game for him out there, because if you see him warming up in practice, he's probably looking a lot better, and that's the same for most players. I think it's a big mental thing for him in the game, as he shot about 30% from the free throw line. Even Ben Simmons doesn't shoot that bad normally from the free throw line. He's traditionally a 60% shooter from the free throw line, which by no means is good whatsoever, but the shooting's really getting to his head right now, and he's got to push back. He's got to push against that. I kind of relate his situation to an Andrew Wiggins with the Timberwolves back in the day, multiple years ago, where every single offseason the question would be for the Timberwolves, is Andrew Wiggins finally going to take that step? And the answer always ended up being no, and that's kind of been the same situation for Ben Simmons. I think that's kind of been the question for him these last 4 years. Is he going to take the step shooting-wise or just offensively in general? And he's kind of just stayed around the same level if you look at his numbers. He hasn't improved too much, like it hasn't been eye-catching. Maybe he looks a little bit more polished and not as raw out there, but his shooting just hasn't improved at all. If anything, it may have gotten worse. Like, if you go back and look at his summer league highlights, he was taking a lot of jumpers, and his jumper looked pretty clean in those games, but it's just kind of disappeared from now. It's just kind of disappeared now. So it all comes down to the mental state and how hard he's willing to work to improve his shot. And based off the last 4 years, I don't feel too positive that he's going to become this great shooter, or just, not great shooter, but just improved in general. I do think he could improve to an extent, but I'm still a little worried about him because he just hasn't shown or given me confidence over the last 4 years of his career that he's really going to be the guy who comes in and improves his game like that. So we'll sum it up with this. Yes, I do think the Timberwolves and Gerson Rosas will try a lot of different things to get Ben Simmons from the Sixers. At the end of the day, I think he will stay in Philadelphia. I just can't really see him. I just really can't see him getting traded. I don't think Jared Morley and the Sixers will really like too much of the value teams will be offering. So I think he'll stay in Philly. But that's it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to grind out some more of these videos since the summer has started recently for me. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.